Hello, my name is Peter Raymer, and today we're going to talk about D365 lists. Now, lists are part of the X++ collection classes, and we talked a little bit in the past about the different types of collection classes. We have arrays, lists, maps, sets, structs. Lists are just one of them, and they've got some special methods and properties that make them useful in specific areas. Specifically, when we add items or we add different lists of values to a list, when the order in which we add them will stay the same, and so that can be really useful when you need the order of certain values to stay the same. You can then quickly use some of the methods to add to the start or the end of a list object. But each one of these collection classes work a little bit differently, so let's dive in and I can show you exactly how you can use it in your own code. Alright, so first of all, I created a new project in Visual Studio, and then I created a series of runnable jobs just to demonstrate this functionality. So you can do the same if you're following along. So first step is we need to define a list. The way we define a list is we use this list class type, and then specify the variable name, say new list, and then we use this enum called types. Types allows us to then pass it any of these different types: a class object, date, string, int, int64, even a record, real, right? Any of these data types we can pass into a list, and then that list, we're telling the system that all the values in that list are going to be that same value that we've defined. So then the next thing or I should say, another way we could define a new list is we could say new list and use this extended type num and specify an extended data type. The system's then going to look up the underlying data type. So in this case, it would be a string. So this would be the same thing as saying type string. I typically just use the types because we know what the type of data type we're going to pass in, but you could use this. All right, once we have a list variable, the way we add additional items to it is we can use add_end and then specify our value, in this case an integer. We're going to add the integer 1 and then 2 and then 3 to the end of the list. Well, what's pretty cool is you can also use this method called add_start to add a number to the very start of it. Normally you'd have to write some code, write some for loops of, say, a container or something else, potentially to create a new object and add something to the beginning of a list. So this is really useful when we want to order some numbers and keep it in the same order. So definitely very valuable there. Next, how do we actually print out these values or loop through the values once we have our list of different variables? The way we do that is we use this get enumerator method. This is going to get out a list enumerator. So we've declared a variable of type list enumerator. Then we can put that list enumerator in a while statement, and that while statement we'll call move next. Move next is going to do two things for us. First, it's going to move it to the next element or item in this list of values, and it's also going to return true or false if there's another element in this list. If there's not, it'll return false, and then we'll drop out of our while loop. But as long as there is, calling move next is really all we need to do. Then once we get in, we can use the method .current, and that will get out whatever variable we've stored in. In this case, remember, we've stored a list of integers, so we're going to pull out that value into this variable called value, and then we can print it out. So if we print this right now, it would run and show 0, 1, 2, and 3. So pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy, but each one of these collection classes have different methods, so it's useful to know kind of how to use it, how to then loop through these various objects. All right, what else can a list object do for us? It actually has these methods called append and merge that are really useful too. So let's pretend you've got two different lists, list 1 and list 2. Here I've created this for loop to just populate list 1 with the numbers, 1 through 6 or 1 through 5, something like that, right? And then here it's going to populate the numbers 6 through 10 afterwards. Well, how do I combine those two lists together? Normally I'd have to maybe write another for loop and create a third list and get a little complicated. Here I can just say list1.append list and add it to the end. There's also a merge function that's helpful as well for combining two lists together. It then just produces a third list object in case you don't want to change the contents of the first list. So this is really useful. In this case, it's going to print out all the numbers in our list. All right, another really helpful value or helpful method is this method called elements. Elements is like count in the sense that it will return the number of objects or items in your collection. So if we've added 3 elements to our collection, this value is going to return that there are 3 values in the list. So this is helpful if you need to know how many items you've added. Is it 0? Is it greater than 0? That kind of thing. Okay, next, let's look at an example of how Microsoft has used lists in their base code. So one example is in this app Copilot agent task template provider. This is a little bit newer, right? I believe at least. Here's a list. It's creating a list of type classes. And then what it does is we can see that, and actually here's maybe our second list, it can then loop through, just as we saw using that move next, loop through our different class objects. In this case, it's actually instantiating the class, seeing is this agent accessible to the user, and if so, it's adding itself to this other outside list as well. So getting a consolidated list down. So really useful to quickly iterate through things, and it can be more complex types that you wouldn't be able to store, say, in a temp table like a class object. So if you've done some C# programming or another programming language, I'm sure you've used lists a whole lot. Okay, I guess, yeah, here's our example of merge from earlier. Merge takes 2 lists, combines it into a third list. Pretty straightforward there. And then, okay, one more question is, okay, you may have seen there's a list enumerator and the list iterator. Typically, it's a best practice to use the list enumerator. However, the list enumerator can't be changed as you're looping through it. So there's some rare cases where you may want to use a list iterator, but in general, a list enumerator is going to perform better and be a little bit more straightforward. But if you wanted to use the list enumerator, it does have slightly different syntax. So in here, we're, have the same thing. We instantiated a list. We've added 3 integers to our list. And then in order to create a list iterator, we don't call the method get enumerator or get iterator, right? We need to actually instantiate the list iterator, pass it the list, and then that gets us our list iterator out. Then from there, instead of using the method move next, we need to use the method more. More is just going to get whether we have more values or not. It's not going to move to the next item within our list. So that's where we actually need to add list iterator dot next inside of our while loop to move to the next one. So it's kind of one extra line of code compared to the list enumerator. So that's another reason why it's maybe not preferred. But you can use it list.more, list.next, and then you, instead of using .current, we use .value to get the value out of the current item within that list. Okay, so let's see. One other piece. all of these X++ collections can be packed into a container. So if I have a list, I can call the .pack method. It'll put it into a container C, and then I can use that container to turn it back into a list right here. Now, there may be various reasons for you to do that. Containers are really portable. They can be useful for integrations in various pieces, but it can be helpful to, put something all into a condensed object. Obviously, a list is already a single object that's useful to pass between methods and classes and other things, but definitely something to think about. Containers can be stored into a table, so that can be helpful as well. So another little helpful tip there. All right, so that's really what we have for lists. They're extremely useful for ordering different values in a list and then looping back through in the same order. I really appreciate you watching. If you liked the video, click the like button. I also invite you to push the subscribe button as well. If there's other topics you would like to see a video on, please post in the comments and I'll see what I can do. I hope you learned something new today. Thank you.